Hi, my name's Alan Smith, and this is the sixth in a series of webcasts covering the development and experimentation of using GPT algorithms to control high-level strategies of a StarCraft II bot. In the previous webcast, I added the functionality for the bot to generate more advanced units and structures. In this webcast, we'll be modifying the prompt to build and train these more advanced units and structures, and testing the strategy against a StarCraft AI with different difficulty settings. In the previous webcast, when I was implementing the logic for the new units, I was using a test build order in a text file. And this was so we could easily test the creation of the new units and structures. In this webcast, we want GPT4 to create the build order, so I'll comment out the code that loads the test file. The next thing I'm going to do is to add the logging of the Vespane gas statistics so that they're going to be visible in TensorBoard. And with that done, we can modify the prompt to add the new units and structures. So for the units, I'll add options to build Stalkers, Sentries, Adepts, Phoenix, Oracle, Void Ray, and Immortal. And in the structures, I'll add the options to build an Assimilator, a Cybernetics Core, a Stargate, and a Robotics Factory. Now that we've got many units available, when we're specifying the count of these units in the prompt, for each unit and structure, it would be good to specify if we have 0 instances of a unit and structure. And that would help the language model to understand that those units can be created. So in the getGameStateDescription method, I'll add arrays for the available units and structures, and initialize the unit and structure counts to 0. And with those changes done, we can test the implementation on the very easy level. Before we do this, I'll open a console and run my batch file that's going to start TensorBoard. And here we can see we've got plenty of statistics from previous games. So I'll go into the logs directory and delete all these previous traces. And that will make it easier to compare how the new prompt plays at different levels. We'll start with the easiest level. The idea here is to see if the AI can build these additional units. And it's going to be easier to do this if we're not getting attacked by a ferocious enemy. So let's start the application and see if it can generate those additional units. So the game started, and we can see the modified game state that includes all of the possible structures and units, including the ones with a count of 0. And this game state will be sent in the prompt to GPT4. So I'll refresh TensorBoard so we can follow the progress of the game. So at the start of the game, we're just in the resource gathering phase. We'll need to gather quite a few resources before we can build the more advanced units. So I'll pause the recording for a bit. So now we're almost 5 minutes into the game. And we can see that the strategy is suggesting to build a robotics factory and also create air units. We can see the robotics factory, a Stargate, a couple of Immortals, and quite a few Phoenixes in the build order. And now we're almost 8 minutes into the game. And we can see that our army is getting strengthened by these more advanced units. And now we're 10.5 minutes into the game. And the game state shows that we've created advanced structures and we've got quite a few advanced units. And at this point, GPT4 has decided to attack the enemy base. And in just under 12 minutes, we've got quite an easy victory here. So we can see that the modifications to the prompt allow us to create quite an advanced army. Let's see how well GPT4 can take this army into battle on the different levels. So we'll skip the easy level and go straight on to medium and start the game. And this time we're playing in the bottom right of the map. So about 4 minutes into the game, you can see that we've created a couple of cybernetics cores. But our army consists of only 7 zealots. Even so, GPT4 has decided to attack the enemy base. And during the attack, GPT4 has decided to add Phoenixes and Immortals to the build order. However, as the structures are still under construction, these can't be built. So we still have an army consisting only of zealots. So that early attack ended in failure. So GPT4's decided to switch the strategy to defending the base, which turned out to be a wise decision, because you can see that the base is currently under attack. However, we've got quite a few advanced structures and plenty of resources. And GPT4's decided to put quite a few advanced units into the build order. So let's see if they can get here in time to defend the base. So we're almost 13 minutes into the game now, and we're in a good position to build another army using more advanced units. And around 17 minutes into the game, we can see that we've got a good number of forces. And if we check in TensorBoard, we can see that we're also gathering resources effectively. So at 23 minutes, GPT-4's decided to go for another attack. This time we've got a much larger army. However, the enemy will have created additional bases and have stronger units. But we can see that our more advanced units, especially the air units, are doing considerable damage to the enemy base. And we're still gathering resources at a good rate and producing plenty more units. And at 37 minutes into the game, the medium AI has decided to surrender. So that was quite a lengthy game, but GPT-4 did manage to come out victorious. So before we increase the difficulty, I'm going to make a slight change to the prompt. One thing I noticed when testing was that when the AI is attacking the enemy base, the game can change very dynamically. And if we generate a build order of 20 units and structures, that build order will need to get completed before we call GPT-4 to get a new strategy. And this is really too long for the AI to be able to take action when the game can be changing very dramatically. So I'll modify this line to say, based on your strategy, choose the next build options to build units and structures, and not specify a number. And below that, I'll specify if your high-level strategy is to defend your base, you must choose 20 build options. And if your high-level strategy is to attack the enemy base, you must only choose 5 build options. And I've capitalised must, so it should hopefully take more notice of those sentences. So I'm going to set the difficulty to medium hard. In this build of the StarCraft bot code, there's actually a slight bug in the enumeration. So although I'm specifying difficulty medium hard, we're actually playing on the hard level. And I'm going to modify real time to true, so we can actually view the game in real time. It will take quite a long time to play, but I will edit the game. Another modification that I've made is that I'm using the Azure speech services to generate a voice that will read out the strategy. The way that I do this is when we get the strategy from GPT, we send it as a message on the Azure service bus. And I have a simple C# console application that will dequeue these messages and then use the Azure speech service to read out the strategy. The Azure service bus is a nice way of integrating two different technologies because it uses open source protocols and we're using UTF-8 encoding. So let's start the game and see how well the AI plays on the hard level.
Strategy: defend your base. The best strategy would be to focus on building up your economy and defenses. Since you only have 50 minerals and no Vespine gas, you should prioritize building probes to gather more resources. You also have no pylons, which are necessary for building other structures and units, so building a pylon should be your next priority. After that, you should consider building a gateway to start producing combat units.
So we're now getting a good summarization of the strategy. We can understand how GPT-4 is analysing the game state before it generates the build order. And this is an example of chain of thought reasoning in prompt engineering. We're asking the model to think about the game statistics and decide on a strategy, and then use that strategy to create the build order. And I found in testing that this is much more effective in generating more efficient build orders. So as this is running in real time, I'm going to be editing the gameplay quite heavily. But I will post videos of the games in real time if you do want to take a look through them. So let's fast forward to about 3 minutes in the game.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
So you can see that GPT's chosen to attack the enemy base, which is probably not a wise decision, as we only had 3 zealots produced at the time. But we can see that we've got a very short build order, so we should hopefully get an update to the strategy fairly soon. And we can see that those 3 units were destroyed pretty quickly.
Strategy: defend your base. It is advisable to focus on building up your economy and army. You have a significant amount of minerals, but no Vespine gas, limiting your options for advanced units and structures. You also have a decent amount of supply left, so there's no immediate need for more pylons. However, your army is small, consisting only of probes and zealots, and you lack advanced structures like the cybernetics core, Stargate, and robotics facility.
So that was quite a wise decision. GPT4's decided to stick to defending the base, and also focus on building more advanced units. So let's fast forward a bit.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
So it's decided to go for another attack again. And like the first one, I don't think this was a very wise decision. However, we are now creating some more advanced units, so we might be able to make a bit of an erosion in the enemy base and prevent them from quickly progressing to generating more advanced units.
Strategy: defend your base. It would be beneficial to focus on building more offensive units to strengthen your army. You have a good number of probes for resource gathering, and your supply cap allows for more units. Building more stalkers and zealots would be a good choice, as they are versatile units that can handle a variety of threats. Additionally, considering the amount of Vespine gas, building an immortal could be a good investment for dealing with heavier enemy units. Lastly, building another nexus would help in expanding your resource gathering and production capabilities.
So GPT-4's decided to switch back to a defensive strategy. And with 2 nexuses and quite a large number of probes, we're in a good position to create more advanced structures and a more advanced army. So let's fast forward to 10 minutes into the game.
Strategy: defend your base. It would be wise to focus on building more offensive units to strengthen your army. You have a good number of probes and a decent amount of Vespine gas, but your minerals are low. Therefore, it would be beneficial to focus on units that require more Vespine gas and fewer minerals. You also have a good number of gateways and a Stargate, so you can produce a variety of units. However, your supply is almost capped, so building more pylons should be a priority.
So I'm not an expert StarCraft player, but I think this was quite a good strategy, based on the state of the game. And you can see how the language model is using reasoning to make good decisions about what to create in the game. So let's fast forward another 5 minutes.
Strategy: defend your base.
So again, GPT-4's decided to take a defensive position and build up more units. Because we've got quite a lot of structures to build these units, you can see that it progresses very quickly through the build order. So let's jump forward a bit in the game. So the enemy is launching an attack, but luckily we've got quite a large army in a good defensive position. So in TensorBoard, we can see that we've managed to create a much stronger army than we did in the previous game. Although we did take a bit of a small hit in that last attack. We can see that the score graph has also progressed much better than the previous game. And scrolling up, we can see that we're quite healthy in terms of resources available and the rate of the resource gathering.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
Yay!
You have a strong economy with a good amount of resources and a solid army composition. However, your supply is nearing its cap and you have a significant amount of minerals and Vespine gas. You should focus on expanding your army and improving your tech. Building more immortals would be beneficial due to their effectiveness against Zerg units. Also, consider adding more air units like Phoenixes or Void Rays from your Stargate. Lastly, building another robotics facility would allow you to produce more units simultaneously.
So with a much larger army, this attack should be a lot more successful. So we've managed to clear out that section. And we can see in TensorBoard that we've still got a really strong army. So let's see if they can overrun the enemy base. So we're progressing pretty well here. And it's looking like this will hopefully be a victory for GPT-4.
Strategy: defend your base.
Oh no! GPT-4 thought it was a better idea to return to a defensive position. We can see in TensorBoard that the army has taken a bit of a dent. So let's fast forward a bit.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
Yay!
You are at maximum supply cap with a strong army composition, particularly with 19 immortals and 6 void rays. However, you have a low count of zealots and sentries which are crucial for ground defense and force field utility. Your resource count is also relatively low, which limits the number of units or structures you can build. Therefore, the best strategy would be to focus on attacking the enemy base with your current army while using your resources to build more zealots and sentries for defense and utility. Strategy: attack the enemy base. You are at maximum supply cap with a strong army composition and a healthy economy. Your army is heavily composed of stalkers and immortals, with some air support from void rays and phoenixes. You have a significant amount of resources, but no supply left to build additional units. Therefore, your best strategy would be to launch an attack on the enemy base with your current army, while using your resources to replace any lost units during the attack. Strategy: attack the enemy base. You have reached the maximum supply cap and have a substantial amount of resources. You have a strong army composition with a high count of stalkers, void rays, and immortals. However, you have a low count of zealots and sentries which are crucial for ground defense and force field abilities respectively. You also have a good number of nexuses and probes for resource gathering. Therefore, the best strategy would be to focus on attacking the enemy base while maintaining a strong defense at your base. Strategy: defend your base.
So 25 minutes into the game, and it's decided to take a defensive strategy again. It seems like it's in a good position to win, but GPT4 is not making the decision to go in and finish the game. Maybe making some modifications to the prompt could help to improve things.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
So 28 minutes into the game, it's decided to go for another attack. Let's see if it can complete the task this time.
Strategy: attack the enemy base. You have a strong economy with a large amount of resources and a full supply cap. You have a balanced mix of ground and air units, with a significant number of immortals and void rays. Your structures are also well developed, with multiple nexuses and stargates. Therefore, the best strategy would be to focus on attacking the enemy base, utilizing your strong army. You should also consider building more offensive units, particularly void rays and immortals, to strengthen your attack force. Strategy: attack the enemy base. You are at maximum supply cap with a significant amount of resources and a strong army composition. Your army is heavily focused on air and ground mechanical units, with a large number of immortals and void rays.
So we can see that the AI on the hard level has decided to surrender. It took almost 30 minutes, but we got there in the end. So let's go up a level in the game. I'll change the game difficulty enumeration to hard, but because of that small bug in the enumeration, we're actually playing on the harder level. And as before, I'll edit the game footage just to show the highlights, and I'll post the full game as a separate video. So about 4 minutes into the game, we can see in TensorBoard that the army creation and workers is similar to the previous game. So this isn't looking too good.
Increase it. You also have a decent number of probes, so your resource gathering is likely efficient. However, your army is small and consists only of basic units, which may not fare well against a Zag opponent who has had the same amount of time to build up their forces.
Our army has been completely wiped out. But luckily, we've still got a lot of workers and we're gathering resources. Let's see if GPT4 can recover from this position. So that was lucky. We managed to create a couple of stalkers that were able to defeat those last units of the enemy who was attacking the base. But we're still in a dangerous position with a very small number of enemy forces.
Mineral field depleted.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
Okay, it's decided to go for another attack. Probably not a wise decision, but let's see how this plays out.
Strategy: defend your base.
Okay, so one of those units survived. You can see that we've still got a very low military, and we've got a reasonable number of workers, but nowhere near as many as we had in the previous game. Let's fast forward a bit. So we've got another attack on the base. But this time we've got a sufficient number of units to defeat them. And we can see in tensor board that the size of the army is increasing very nicely.
Strategy: attack the enemy base.
So this should be fun.
It is advisable to focus on building offensive units to strengthen your army. You have a significant number of immortals and stalkers which are strong against Zag units. However, you are near your supply cap, so building more pylons should be a priority.
So it looks like the enemy were also planning an attack.
So investing in more gateways to increase your unit production rate would be beneficial. Lastly, considering the amount of Vespene gas, building more void rays could be a good option as they are effective against Zag units. Strategy: defend your base.
So we managed to do quite well in that battle, and we're returning to a defensive position. We can see in tensor board that the killed value of units is quite a bit higher than it was in the previous game. And we've returned to a defensive position with still quite a reasonable army.
Additionally, increasing the number of probes will help gather resources faster, allowing you to build more units and structures. Lastly, consider adding more stargates and robotics facilities to diversify your unit production capabilities. Strategy: attack the enemy base. It would be wise to focus on building more offensive units to strengthen your army.
So it has decided to attack. However, the voice console is still reading out the previous strategy.
Strategy: attack the enemy base. It is advisable to focus on building offensive units to strengthen your army. You have a good number of probes and a decent amount of minerals, but no Vespene gas. This limits the types of units you can build. You have a significant number of immortals, which are strong against armored units, but you lack zealots, which are good for soaking up damage. You also have a few stalkers and void rays for ranged attacks. Your supply cap is high, so there's no immediate need for more pylons. Strategy: defend your base.
So around 17 minutes, it's decided to switch to a defensive stance again. You can see that the army has taken a bit of a hit. And we have got a considerably smaller army than we did have in the previous game. But we have got a big jump in the workforce, which means that we'll be able to gather a lot more resources. Let's fast forward a bit and see how the game progresses. So there's another couple of small attacks, but I've fast forwarded to about 23 minutes in the game. And we can see at this point that we're increasing the force of the army very rapidly.
Strategy: attack the enemy base. The best strategy would be to focus on building offensive units to attack the enemy base. Strategy: attack the enemy base. You have a strong army with a high number of immortals and void rays, which are powerful units against Zag. However, your supply is almost capped, limiting your ability to build more units. Your resources are plentiful, allowing for the construction of more structures or units. Considering the game time and your current army, an aggressive strategy might be beneficial. Strategy: attack the enemy base. You have a strong army with a high number of immortals and void rays, which are powerful units. Your supply is almost capped, so you should focus on using your resources to upgrade your units and prepare for an attack. You have a good amount of both minerals and Vespene gas, which can be used to upgrade your units and build more powerful ones if needed. You also have a good number of production buildings, so you can quickly replenish your army if needed.
Okay, we got there eventually. It took us almost 26 minutes. But we can see that the AI on harder has surrendered. So we can see that through adding these more advanced units and making slight modifications to the prompt, we've managed to get GPT-4 to play a fairly reasonable game of StarCraft.